Welcome to Elite Expert Insider Podcast, where we will inspire, motivate, and educate entrepreneurs, innovators, and growth seekers. Brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, making the best and brightest in the industry #1 best-selling authors. 80% of people say they want to write a book. We're assuming that's the same for you. If so, contact us at www.eliteonlinepublishing.com and make your book a reality. Hey everyone, it's Melanie Johnson along with Jen Foster. Welcome to our podcast. We are wondering, are you struggling with sales? Are you trying to get more people in your door to buy your products and services? We have an expert here today who is going to teach us how to overcome all those things and have consistent, repeatable sales success by using people, process, and tools. And I'm super excited because I'm always trying to refine our sales process and help our authors to refine their sales process. So we have Neal Benedict with us today. He's the founder of Silver Brick Sales Solutions, and he's going to give us all kinds of great insights. But first, I want you to remember to subscribe to our podcast, hit that button and subscribe. Leave us a review if you like us, and we know you do because we always bring you super great content. And then the other thing is, if you're looking to become an author and want to use your book as an advertising and marketing tool for your business, then contact us at Elite Online Publishing. We make all of our authors #1 bestsellers, and then we teach them and create a marketing plan for them of how to use their book for their business to get more clients as a sales tool, just like Neal's going to tell us how to get more clients and get those sales closed. Neal, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Melanie, for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here.
Great. Neal, well, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into sales and how you started working and helping people with learning how to do sales.
Sure. Yeah, I still consider myself a recovering corporate head of sales. I spent most of my career in corporate. So early in my career, I started off in technology, spent most of my early career in technology with companies like Intel and Reuters. And then I moved into the manufacturing space, spent a number of years running some relatively small divisions for some manufacturing companies, and then branched out to do some private equity work from there. So, and much like most sales professionals, I sort of fell into the career. Honestly, I can't admit that I have some grand story of a plan that, brought me from the realization that I was a salesperson in a straight, clear path to get there. Again, most like most sales professionals, again, I sort of ended up in this particular field. I mean, it's a great field. I've really enjoyed it, but it was largely based on circumstances that brought me to where I am today. So
that happens sometimes. Sometimes God has a plan for you and you didn't even know.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yep.
So tell us, it sounds like when you go into a company, you assess them and then you design something and implement some key practices and tools. What are some of those, to walk us through the assessment process, and then we'll talk about the tools and practices that you implement.
Sure. Yeah, we obviously it's when you go into any organizations, it's incredibly important to really, not assume that you understand what's going on, even though you've spent lots of hours investigating other companies and seeing a lot of that movie being played over and over again. I think one of the important things is not go in and assume that, again, that you know what's happening in that particular situation. So we'll come in really specifically, as you mentioned in the intro, and look at everything from the people that they have in the sales roles, whether they've got the right people, whether those people are really in the right seats and they've got the right skill sets for those roles. And then we look at sort of the organizational design. Is it structured correctly, going after the right markets? Do they have the right channel strategy if they're selling through partners? Do they have the right overall set of processes that allow them to meet the client's buying needs? And making sure that, again, we're the easiest company in our segment to buy from, for an example. Then we ultimately look at the tools that companies use to execute the sales plan. Do they have effective messaging? Do they have effective, prospecting cadences and plans that they're relying on? Do they have an effective CRM that they're using to drive activities and track customers? Those types of things when we go in. So it's really a fairly extensive assessment process that really doesn't begin and end with the people, even though a lot of times smaller organizations feel like it's mostly wrapped up in the people. But that's usually not the case. I mean, people are part of the equation, but only part.
Yeah, I think it's important to know, like you your book title is Finding Diamonds. So it's like finding that select person who's going to be selling for your company, but it's more than that. It's the systems in place and the sales processes that they can learn. So it's finding that person who can learn your processes and systems. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only to find people that, can learn them, it's, making sure that they exist in the first place, right? Making sure that, that you build processes and systems that are embedded into your organization so that when you do need to go find new salespeople, you're not overly reliant on finding that diamond. You're more reliant upon finding the right people for your organization that can fit into a structure that you've already built. So again, it keeps me a little bit more, as a small business owner or as a company, the foundations that I build are going to be there regardless of what types of turnover, for an example, we have to go through if that ultimately happens. So it's really about the structure first and really the people second.
So tell us a little bit. So after they have that structure, how do they sell faster? It says, once you have those things in place and you can facilitate those, then how do you get those sales faster? Do you have some tips for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just like anything, right? The difference between you and your competition, for an example, is, really the difference between an inch. There's usually not, really, really wide gaps between, people competing in, doing similar things, right? So when you talk about differentiation from a standpoint of you versus your competitors, again, you have to remember that it's a very small margin of differentiation that you go after, right? So I think it's first of all, understanding, how you're different as a company, maybe not even better, but how you're different, right? And how those differences matter to the customer, right? You've got to find customers who care about your differences, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important at first to really understand that, inside and out, and understand again what customers care about related to your differences, right? And then I think it's ultimately sales is a math and numbers game, right? So we have to make sure that we're doing the right things consistently, and that's why processes are so important, right? If we're competing with other companies that have processes that are designed to get in front of customers and start meaningful conversations faster, if they have processes in place that make us easier to do business with, if we have processes in place that allow us to, streamline our follow-up process, because as people seldom buy these days after one contact, right? It's oftentimes it takes many more contacts in order to get a client's trust built in this environment. So I think the processes really are critical because they give us the right cadence to engage with our clients, and they give us the right steps to take in order to make sure that we're doing the right things. And when we realize that our process is off a little bit, we can turn those dials or pull those levers to adjust them and improve them. So I think it's really, it's hard to give you an exact set of things to do because all customers and markets are slightly different. But the key things are to make sure that what you're doing makes you gives you a little bit of differentiation, allows you to slightly appeal to clients that are slightly differently than your competitors are doing. Make sure you're easy to do business with, and make sure that you're there when the client is ultimately ready to make that decision, right?
Right.
Yeah, I've heard about like this saying's been coming across my desk recently, value messaging. Make sure you have value messaging, that they know the benefits and the value of your company and your services of not just like, oh, well, we're better at making a widget, but it's like, how is that better for them? What is the benefit for them to do that? And even the process is like, in our business, we use a book as part of the sales process. Like, how do you do your lead generation? So we say use your book for part of your lead generation to do that. So what are some of the things people have objections? You get the guy, you've gotten that communication going back and forth. You've had those 3 or 4 touch points where you feel like you've got their trust, but they're still not pulling the trigger. What do you find is to get over to that next level? You've got your processes in, you've got your sales scripts and you feel like you're doing everything right, but you can't get them over that step. And I think a lot of people in their businesses, they get to that. It's like, okay, I've got leads coming in, I'm having that conversation, but I'm not closing the deals. What do you take them from there? What advice do you give?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think, a lot of salespeople will see objections as a negative. We ultimately, I think, see them as a positive. Objections tend to, particularly if they're later in the sales cycle, tend to be a good buying signal, because people are thinking through their purchase decision. As you know, people buy emotionally, right? And then they try to justify it with logic. So objections from a logical standpoint tend to indicate, again, that that they've made that emotional decision and they're really close to buying. So I think, first of all, you look at objections in a way that says, okay, what do we do when we see them, right? And you don't want to play tennis, for an example, with a client, right, where you're handling objections and you're acting like a world-class tennis player, and you're just batting it back at them. They hit the next one back, you're just batting it back. It's really not an effective way. So I think the real thing when you get an objection of any type is that there's a couple things you want to do. You want to try to understand that objective, right? So the first thing you want to do is not handle it. You want to understand it, meaning you want to ask deeper questions about that particular objection, right? So if it's your price is too high, you want to dig into that, in detail. Okay, why do you believe the price is too high? What were your expectations around, what this investment would look like, from your standpoint, and dig into it a little bit more, right? They may tell you that they've got a competitive bid and, it's too high compared to your competitors. And, then of course you're going to have to back into, value, right? Why am I different? Why is my value slightly different? Why is my price, the way it is? So, in Sandler, we also teach too, that really, that budget discussion comes fairly early in the sales cycle, for an example, or that pain discussion, or even that decision-making process discussion comes fairly early in the sales cycle. So, if you're doing the right things from a sales standpoint, you shouldn't have too many objections at the end of the cycle because we've handled them largely as we've gone through the selling process. So again, I think mindset, don't see them as objections that need to be handled and hit back. They're really things that probably just need more clarity. And then secondarily, if you do enough discovery and help the client understand, you really the process of discovering for themselves what they need. They tend clients tend not to object to discovery that they've gone through themselves, right? If you've taken me through a discovery process and I've learned about what I need, I seldom have a lot of objections because I've already kind of walked myself through most of those, right? So I think it's really that's really the process you need to look at.
Well, and I think that's really important just because, like you were saying, once that system's in place, most of the objections are covered before they have the objection, right?
Correct. Yeah. It's always better to deal with an objection that salespeople are pretty smart. We know what the objections are, right? Thematically, they usually fit into certain buckets and, you hear them pretty consistently. So if you're waiting to an end of a sales cycle, for objections to come that are actually going to happen and you haven't addressed them up front, then again, you're not really managing the sales cycle as effectively as you could.
So it's really like qualifying your client along the way. It's not just pitching to them. You're wanting to know if you're the right person to work with us. Like,
absolutely.
Do you have the budget? Do you have this? Do you have that? Are you it's almost an interview. Are you a good fit for us? You need to have 4 or 5 things or 10 things to be a qualified client for us. And if you're not, then it's like you need to direct them somewhere else.
Oh, absolutely. All things being equal, honestly, we don't advocate talking at all about ourselves until very, very late in any sales cycle, right? Because if you think about it, most people just don't care about you and what your product is and what you're offering, right? What they care about is, the problems that they've got or the pleasure that they want to move toward. And if you're the person with the right solutions to help them get there, right? And you have that conversation up front, you don't really deal with objections at the back end. And again, we don't advocate really talking about ourselves at all until, really the very end. Because, at that, we really need to know everything that we can about the client before we can start to propose solutions. Because honestly, we don't know what we should be proposing unless we really understand what the client's issues are. So.
Yeah. So a lot of the sales process is asking a lot of questions and listening, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Active listening is critical, right? Not waiting to talk, but really actively listening and making sure that, again, that active listening results in, a communication cycle that really helps you, by the end of your conversation, really helps you frame up exactly what the client is facing, maybe even articulating it better than they can, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I feel like kind of a recap is that make sure you have the right systems in place, CRM, scripts, all that back end, have the right people in place that represent your company that work with those systems well. Make sure
Right.
you are asking questions to qualify the lead first and do a lot of listening. Don't talk about your company or your services right away. Find out what their problems are, make sure they're a good fit for you, and then
Sure.
try and get all the objections. Like it's like the elephant in the room. Get that out in the open first. Just put the objections out there, and then you should have an easier time on the back end. It should close simpler. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Awesome.
Okay. Tell us where we can reach you to get more information.
Sure. Probably the best place to reach me is my email. It's Neal, Neal, .Benedict, Benedict, at silverbricksolutions with an S, one word, .com.
Awesome. Well, we'll put that link up at the bottom of the video. And for those of you listening on iTunes or Stitcher, you can find that in the show notes on our website, on our blog, eliteonlinepublishing.com/blog.
And Neal is, tell us, you have a book. He's an author. So give us the title of your book.
Sure. It's called Finding Diamonds, How to Hire and Retain Salespeople.
There you go.
Awesome. You can find that on Amazon.
All right. Well, so remember, take a look at Neal's book. And if you're looking to become an author yourself, and we can teach you how to use your book as a sales tool to get more clients and close more deals, reach out to us at eliteonlinepublishing.com and subscribe to our podcast, because we always have great information for you, for business people, for entrepreneurs, for authors. So reach out to us here, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. See you next time.
Thank you.
Hey, are you looking for an invoicing and accounting solution? Well, we found one that's ridiculously easy to use. Try FreshBooks. You can create invoices within seconds. Go to freshbooks.com and go check it out. If you'd like to create the most powerful advertising tool for your business, contact us at eliteonlinepublishing.com, where we will help you create, publish, and make your book a #1 bestseller, and show you how to get new leads and more revenue for your business. If you'd like to check us out on our Facebook page, we have a free book for you as our gift. Just go and click Free Book. Remember to subscribe and leave a comment for our podcast. We would love to hear from you.